Get ready, racing fans. The most electrifying week in motorsports is back. October 6th to 11th, Oswego Speedway transforms into the Clay Palace, the ultimate battleground for Super Dirt Week. From the thrilling races to the electrifying atmosphere, it's more than a race. It's racing's biggest party. Don't miss out. Super Dirt Week 2025, October 6th through the 11th.
This is entertainment. People pay to watch this.
Pass to a cutting hill. He darts in. He
People actually subscribe.
All across central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting one. Hey!
We welcome you into Drive Time on a Monday, Overreaction Monday, where I'm sure lots of overreactions are going on about Syracuse football right now. We want to hear from you today. Phone lines open throughout the show today. 315-437-7644. Always the phone number to call. And we are wide open taking your phone calls throughout the show this afternoon. Here with you until 6 p.m. We'll get into what was another very disappointing football game for the Orange, this time on the road at SMU. 0-2 in the Rickie Collins era as the starting quarterback, and it has not looked good. They've gone down 31-3 in both games. They've gone down 24-3 at the half in both of those games. So as we did a lot on Orange Nation today, we'll address the question, the elephant in the room. Is it time to move away from Rickie Collins? Is it time to bench the starting quarterback? Going into a bye this week, Pittsburgh out of the bye week. Pittsburgh just made a quarterback change, and that looks pretty darn good for them against a pretty darn bad Boston College team. That game's starting to look like maybe not a tossy-uppy game as we were projecting throughout much of this season. The Orange 3-3 going into the bye week, and they have potentially a quarterback controversy on their hands. We will get into that today. We welcome your phone calls on whether they should make a move at the quarterback position. We'll hear some from Fran Brown, go through some of his noteworthy post-game comments after the loss on Saturday down in Dallas, including one comment he made about how the defense played better in the second half because the play calling was different in the second half. We'll try and figure out what he meant by that, go through some of the numbers on what changed for the Orange defense in the second half compared to the first half. We welcome your thoughts as well in the Q Sports Talk chat. Q Sports Talk on our Twitch stream, Q Sports Talk on the YouTube simulcast as well. You can chat away in there, and we'll answer your questions throughout the breaks. There are no breaks on our Twitch stream or our YouTube page. But we begin today our Burdick BMW of Cicero opening drive. We've got to talk about Rickie Collins, and we've got to try and figure out what Fran Brown, the head coach of Syracuse, should do right now, knowing what we know about Rickie Collins and knowing the very little we know about Luke Carney, who we assume is the backup quarterback at this point. And again, phone lines are open. If you have thoughts on whether they should move off Rickie Collins, whether it's too early, anything else on your mind, Syracuse football related, 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call. So let's lay out the case for benching Rickie Collins and the case against benching Rickie Collins. And then I'll give you my take on the situation. And before we even get into that, I do want to say I don't see a world where Fran Brown moves off of Rickie Collins and benches him before the next game against Pittsburgh. Based on what Fran has said, based on all of his comments, and how you need to support Rickie, and it's the Rickie show is something that he said going into the SMU game. And I never thought in a million years, really, that we would be talking about this early. But I understand why we're talking about it, because Rickie Collins was, as he said himself, not good on Saturday. Really not good. He was very inaccurate, and he was, unfortunately, the biggest reason why they did not win that game at SMU. I don't know if they would have won the game with Steve Angeli, but it definitely has been a very big drop-off, a drop-off more than what I was anticipating at the quarterback position. And I'm definitely way more concerned about the quarterback position, about Rickie Collins as the quarterback going forward for the rest of the season after what we saw against SMU. I think you can make a case he was even worse against SMU. The Duke game, there are a lot of things working against him. This game, Rickie missed a lot of open throws. It felt like there were guys open over the middle of the field. The play calls were working. I really thought this could be a get-right opportunity for him, considering SMU is not a good defense, and he would just have a little bit more time under his belt. But he looked like a quarterback that was very shaken confidence-wise in dealing with some nerves, for sure, based on some of the throws that he made. So having said that, I don't think Fran Brown is thinking about this much, and I do not expect Fran Brown to make this decision or make a quarterback change. Having gotten that out of the way, let's lay out the case for why it is time to make a quarterback change. 2 key points for me on this. The first one being, this is probably the game to do it if you are going to do it at some point this season. You've got the bye week. It's middle of the season. This Pittsburgh game is a game you really need to win if you want to go bowling this year. Pittsburgh right now, to me, is the 3rd easiest game remaining of the 6 on your schedule. You've got the BC, you've got the UNC home games that look pretty winnable, but Pittsburgh's a winnable game. You do not want Luke Carney's first start to be on the road at Georgia Tech. You don't want it to be on the road at Notre Dame. Don't want it to be on the road at Miami. Maybe you could say that UNC game works out decently as a time to make a change. But I think given the bye week, given that it's already sort of a tipping point right now where it feels like we've seen a decent amount of Rickie Collins, and I think you can make a case that we should have maybe seen Luke Carney in the last game some, although Rickie did showcase his best portion of football we've seen so far from Rickie Collins was the final quarter of SMU. And I think that's noteworthy because that's the least stressful quarter he's played in. That goes back to, I do think this is a mental confidence nerves issue for Rickie Collins right now. You can tell he's got a great arm and he can make the throws, but his confidence is shaken. And I even said it in our SMU game prediction on Friday that I felt like Syracuse was going to get behind and they were going to come back because Rickie was going to settle in when there was less pressure and make some nice throws. And he did kind of do that. And Fran Brown talked about he played well at the end of the game. And we know that Steve Angeli started slow and there's growing pains at the quarterback position. It's not that crazy to think that Rickie Collins is struggling here. It makes sense that he would be struggling. It's just his first and second start ever of his college career. But the case for benching Rickie is, 1, this would be the game to do it given the rest of the schedule, given it's a bye week. And 2, and this might be the bigger point, the frustration from the players is very evident right now. And the frustration from the coaching staff and the frustration that is building kind of on the sideline that you can just see body language-wise is not good right now. Yasin Willis had some interesting comments after the game, which we can get into, where he said we've got to get closer together, and he feels like the quarterback change has kind of made it so that guys are not as close. It's just hard to hear some of the comments that come out post-game and some of the body language and not think that there is a little bit of a fear here that if Fran keeps with Rickie Collins and it continues to look this poorly and it does not improve, the locker room might go from frustrated to over that tipping point where you become in jeopardy of losing the locker room. I don't think that'll be the case. I think Fran Brown is a great coach. He's on a short list of coaches you would want that would make sure that would never happen. And I'm sure he's doing everything to avoid it happening right now. But it did feel like some of the post-game comments, some of the body language after missed throws, it just feels like we're kind of borderline on that tipping point right now. And if it goes really poorly against Pittsburgh, we might cross that tipping point. So that's the biggest thing, is you don't want to lose the locker room. You don't want to lose motivation within the team room to keep going here. And once you lose that, it's really hard to recover. And that's the thing that Fran has to be weighing here with this quarterback decision. He has a better gauge of that than I do, and maybe I'm off, and you guys tell me. But it does feel like the players are growing more and more frustrated. And it's almost hard for the players to answer questions right now because they are kind of thinking, the questions are getting posed, what do you need to do offensively better? And they're almost trying not to just say, well, it's the quarterback. That's the biggest thing. And not throw their teammate under the bus. And no one has done that, but it's kind of teetering on that, just the way I see it, that there is some growing frustration amongst the players, the coaches. Of course, Josh Gaddis was very frustrated at the end of the first half with Rickie Collins. So that's the case for benching Rickie Collins. The case against it, we really just don't know what they have in Luke Carney. The same way we didn't know what they had in Rickie Collins when everyone wanted Steve Angeli to get benched. What we know about Luke Carney is very little, and he's even younger than Rickie Collins. And it's hard for me to imagine a world where Luke Carney comes out and just looks 10 times better than Rickie Collins. I don't think the coaches are that far off in the talent evaluation. I just don't think that's possible. What we know right now is, according to the coaches, Rickie Collins was in a close battle with Steve Angeli. And don't forget, Rickie Collins was already named the starter in the spring when he was battling it out with quarterbacks that were in the room before Steve Angeli was there. Nothing of what we know, and I know some of you are going to say, well, that was just PR, and clearly it was never a close battle, and that has been proven. And maybe that's true. Maybe Fran was just supporting Rickie and making it seem like it was more of a battle than it was. I think it's more Rickie probably looked good in practice, but we're finding out that Rickie's not one of those guys that has been able to translate it from practice to in-game, and that's a big difference at the quarterback position. But based on Fran's comments, based on everything we know, it's just hard to imagine Luke Carney is like right behind Rickie Collins in their eyes right now. Now, of course, that opinion has probably changed after what we've seen from Rickie since he has been starting in real games the last 2 weeks. But can any of you honestly say Luke Carney is definitely going to be better than Rickie Collins? I don't think you can honestly say that. We don't actually know how good Luke Carney is. Now, the argument is, of course, well, we got to find out, because can it get much worse than it has been? And I hear that argument, and we'll get into kind of my overall thoughts here. But just laying out the case against it, it's hard to be too confident in Luke Carney, because it's not like he's some 5-star recruit. He was a 3-star recruit, and he has played very, very little college football to this point, and, of course, has only played in one game to this point. So we don't really know what you are getting if you turn to Luke Carney. The other thing to mention is if you do go to Luke Carney, you really can't go back. You can't make another quarterback decision. So you don't want it to be wishy-washy, or you don't want it to be a thing all season. If you go to Luke Carney, that is the last game we will see Rickie Collins start at Syracuse probably ever. So you have to be very convinced that you have seen enough from Rickie, and despite his talent, you have seen enough to move on from him and say he's not ever going to be the answer at the quarterback position for Syracuse. Because I just don't see a world where Rickie Collins gets benched and he's back next year at Syracuse. I really don't. So that's kind of how I feel as why this is a big decision, and that's the case against benching Rickie Collins. Overall, my stance on this, I would understand, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I have been sort of against the idea of Luke Carney and always thought that was kind of silly to bring up. And again, I said I don't think Fran is going to make this move, but I would understand if Fran made the move based on what we saw at the quarterback position and based on what we saw from Rickie in the SMU game and how inaccurate he was and just the overall body language of the team. I would understand it. I think if I was the head coach right now, I would give Rickie the first half of the Pittsburgh game. And if it is as bad as what we have seen the last 2 weeks, then I would feel okay enough about the sample size that we have given a talented quarterback in Rickie Collins. And I would say, given that the locker room and everyone out there is working really hard and it is pretty much all in the quarterback position right now, why the team has gone from a great start to the year overall to really looking at a tough end to the year, I think you owe it to the players, you owe it to everyone else to at least see what you have in Luke Carney if the first half against Pittsburgh goes that poorly. Because I don't want Luke Carney starting for the first time against Georgia Tech on the road. But that's kind of how I feel about it. We welcome your thoughts throughout the show today. If you want to chime in, if you have an opinion on the quarterback decision, whether there should be a decision right now, what you made of Rickie Collins, what are the things he needs to work on, 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call. That's 4ESPN44. We'll be back with more. Hear a little bit from Fran Brown throughout the show today as well. Want to get into something that stood out that he said about the defense. We'll touch on that. And again, we welcome your phone calls here on Drive Time. You're listening to it on ESPN Radio or watching it on QSportsTalk.com.
Auburn Community High.
Fire everyone. What's up, chat? Gavenda says he better not make a change. I hear you. It's a tough one. I agree, San Diego Q's. The body language is kind of concerning. We'll get into some of the players' comments, but that makes it even more concerning, I'd say. SMU didn't have their backups in. They did have Marcellus Barnes in. We saw that, but he's been kind of a borderline starter for them. Yeah, I think Duke is a little bit more of a defensive-minded coaching staff, San Diego Q's, where Manny Diaz does kind of puzzle young quarterbacks pretty frequently. But the SMU one is totally accurate. I mean, I really thought that he would play better. And you're right, Duke is statistically one of the worst pass defenses in the country. Or they were going into that game. I think they were like 121. Yeah, I'm just reading through all these comments. Sorry, catching up. I honestly don't think the lights will be too bright for a kid who won 4 state titles in Texas. I agree. I also think you would have made that argument about Rickie. Like, the lights won't be too bright for someone who backed up LSU's top quarter, a Heisman Trophy winner and was a 4-star high-end guy. You're right so far, Lukey Lou. It can't really get worse than what we've seen so far, but can it get better with Rickie, I guess is the question. Yeah, the SMU one stung because I do think if they just got decent quarterback play, they could have won that game. I don't think SMU played great, really. Fran Brown honeymoon is definitely in jeopardy of being over. But I don't really know if this should... I mean, as I've said, when you go to a backup quarterback, your team's not going to play as well. So, yeah, it might not be as many wins as we thought going into the season, although really 3-3 is kind of what we thought they were going to be at. But I don't know if you put that on Fran. I mean... Can you blame him? Rickie's just not playing well. Is that on Fran? He just looks nervous. And obviously you could argue that Fran, scouted Rickie and was wrong about him to this point anyway, but I don't know if I blame Fran really for this. I think it's just a tough hand that they were dealt with Stephen Jelly getting injured. Lukey Lou, we'll be talking basketball this week, don't you worry. ACC Media Days tomorrow for the men's basketball team. Women's basketball team was down there today. I didn't see the Kyron Lacey thing. He was the wideout for LSU?
AM. ESPN 97.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Dr. My Eyes welcoming us back from the break. A lot of chatter about Rickie Collins' eyes. Is he locking in on that first read too much? That's something we were talking about after the first game. Didn't really improve much. We'll get to some of the comments from some of the players post-game, including Rickie Collins. Yasin Willis as well. Also, hear some from Fran Brown, what he said about how his quarterback looked in his second college start. Here's some from Fran Brown on what changed with the defense. Was he pleased with how much they ran the ball? Do they need to get to the ball to Yasin Willis more? I know these are conversations that I feel like we keep having and Fran keeps getting asked about, but that's the nature of things once you're on your first losing streak as head coach of Syracuse. First time losing back-to-back games for Fran Brown. The bye week coming at a good time for Orange football. Yasin Willis, we'll get to his comments in a little bit. He used the phrase that Rickie needs to have softer eyes, he thinks. Don't lock in on that first read too much. So a lot of conversation about the quarterback's eyes, progressions, stuff that you don't really want to be talking about, but that's what we've been talking about here on Drive Time. We're here with you until 6 p.m. this afternoon, and we are welcoming your phone calls on the state of Orange football, what they need to do at the quarterback position. Should they make a change? Is it time to give up on the Rickie Collins experience, knowing that if you do pull that trigger, you probably can't go back and probably won't ever see Rickie Collins at the quarterback position again for Syracuse if you do make that change? These are all things to be weighing. It's a tough decision right now for Fran Brown. And as we said, I don't expect Fran to make a quarterback decision. I think that would be pretty shocking if it came out that Luke Carney was going to start, or if we found out right before kickoff in a little under 2 weeks, 7:30 kickoff, by the way, we found out today it will be for that Pittsburgh game. It'd be pretty shocking if we found out in a little under 2 weeks, right before kickoff, that Luke Carney is a starting quarterback, based on what Fran has said to this point. Let's go to the phone lines right now, though, and let's bring on Michael in Manlius. What's up, Michael?
Hey, Tim. Not much. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I wanted to say my opinion about this quarterback situation. It's going to be a tough decision for Fran Brown, and I think that if you're going to make a change, now's the time to do it before the Pitt game. And like you said, I don't think the Georgia Tech game is a good time to switch quarterbacks because they're tough. So I'm going to just say it. We got to be relentless, and that means life finds a way. So I'd switch quarterbacks.
All right. Yeah.
But the word of the week, Tim, is relentless.
Okay. Even a word of the week on a bye week. I love it from Michael. And I love him just coming out and saying this is the stance that he would take on the issue. And I hear it. I mean, if you want to argue right now, you've seen enough from Rickie Collins and you want Syracuse to move on, you've got a pretty good argument. I understand that side of things. And as I said, I would understand if Fran came out and he said, we're going to start Luke Carney against Pittsburgh, because this is probably the time to do it, considering it is a bye week, considering you'd have a little bit more time to get everyone ready for the new quarterback, and considering it's a home game against Pittsburgh, it'll be homecoming. It's not some hostile environment. And you don't really want another one of these clunkers to happen. You have to have some faith that Rickie Collins is going to go out there, and based on what we saw in his final quarter against SMU, he's going to carry that in. He's going to be coming off the bye week. We'll have a better game plan for him. Because if he goes out there and he struggles again in front of the home crowd, and it's as bad as what we've seen in his first 2 starts, the Boo Birds are going to be out. And it's going to be a really tough situation going on the road the following week at Georgia Tech. Maybe even a tougher decision to make when you know, okay, now I've given him one more start, and it hasn't gotten better. And now it feels like maybe I have to make the move to Luke Carney because it's one more start into this thing. But if you don't make that move, then you got Georgia Tech, and that's a tough situation for a true freshman quarterback. And again, we don't really know how good Luke Carney is. Luke Carney might go out there and play worse. Based on what the coaches have evaluated to this point, Luke Carney's behind Rickie Collins. Now, that's what they evaluated in practice. Rickie Collins, for all we know, was tearing up in practice. I mean, he throws a nice ball. I've seen him in spring camp and stuff like that, and he was making all the right throws. I think the problem with Rickie Collins to this point is it has not translated on the field in live game action. When he's under the gun and it's up to him to make that split-second decision, quarterback's a really tough position. And we've seen it this year. I mean, look across the country. There are a lot of really talented guys that check all the boxes of arm talent, dual threat, what you want in a modern quarterback right now, just like Rickie Collins. He checks a lot of those boxes. Arch Manning comes to mind. Cade Klubnik comes to mind. Even Drew Aller at Penn State. All 3 of those teams have been incredibly underwhelming. They're outside the top 25. They probably have no chance of making the college football playoff right now. And all 3 of those teams have something in common. Their quarterbacks got their confidence shaken, and they have not recovered. And all 3 of those quarterbacks could be NFL draft picks. They fit the bill of what you want. And Rickie Collins fits the bill talent-wise. But when your confidence gets shaken at the quarterback position, then you're into a scary time period. And you're also, if the confidence is shaken to the point where the quarterback's confidence is so shaken that the rest of the team has no confidence in him, then you're fighting a very difficult battle. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's check in with Scooter, who is in Jamesville, of course. What's up, Scoot?
Yeah, well, we kind of know that basically you better make a decision because both quarterbacks aren't coming back. I mean, they're not. One of them's not going to want to sit for another year. And right now we think it's going to be Rickie Collins. So if you make a decision, I think Collins is transferring out. I don't think he's going to wait around. The other thing is, I keep hearing he's going to have 2 years in Jelly. It's an Achilles heel. I mean, I can name you players that not 100% totally recover. We're not sure, and it's the age level. Aaron Rodgers totally recovered from his. I grew up with Dan Marino. When he had his, he lost the ability actually to plant, and then was throwing everything with his arm, and then his arm finally kind of went. And we're not sure about Kevin Durant. Has he been is he like he was before the Achilles heel situation? So I think you're going to have to decide if this is going to be a lingering effect or he's going to be totally 100% healthy. And,
yeah, that's a fair point. I also wonder, Scooter, a little bit. He looked great against Clemson. That was the game where it was like light bulb. Wow, Steve Angeli looks like Kyle McCord from last year. Everyone's kind of looked pretty good against Clemson, and Clemson has more had offensive issues than defensive issues, but it's possible we're overrating Steve Angeli a little bit because his 2 good games were Colgate, which everyone's going to look good against Colgate, and then Clemson for the first 3 quarters. And, of course, you talk about shaking confidence. That Clemson team has had their confidence completely rattled to this point in the season. So I'm not saying that Steve Angeli isn't going to have a good year next year, but it's not some shoo-in like you're saying that he returns from the Achilles injury and he's going to be right up there nationally in all the stats again.
Well, we'll see. To me, it's just you have to make a decision. I have no problem if Collins is the quarterback or he gets replaced. My thing is that I really thought, and like I said, with this new rule where you can talk to your offensive coordinator up to the 15-second thing, even last year when we went on tempo, to me, you're helping out your quarterback because the coordinator can actually be reading the defense and tell them what to do. But if you're in a huddle, obviously you don't see what the defense is going to be set up. And last year, when we ran up tempo, we came back against Stanford, even though we didn't win it. When we went up tempo, we moved the ball. Georgia Tech, we moved the ball up and down in the UNLV game when we came back. So I'm just wondering if they can go more up tempo and have the offensive coordinator help out who's ever going to be the quarterback here. And you mentioned the three teams. To me, this is what I love about analysts and just watching the games. If you watch the Penn State games and they struggle, I think it was against Kent State or something. They're only up 10-0. They struggle offensively. And yet we're told, well, the first 2 or 3 games, well, obviously it was more than that. And if you saw Archie Manning, we were watching in the San Jose State game, and they couldn't move San Jose State off the ball when they ran the ball. I said, this is San Jose State.
Yeah, that was concerning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's concerning. Even though they won the game, they're 38-7, couple block punts and an interception return, but the handwriting was on the wall. And Clemson, the same scenario. I mean, they just couldn't move the ball, and it just, to me, I think with Clemson, they had enough teams in the past. They didn't have to be 100% to beat them. This year they had to be, and they haven't been 100%. But it's just amazing that you got these analysts that might have a reason to really pump up these teams, from the rating standpoint or whatever. But I'm not surprised about those three. And the amazing part is you mentioned the quarterback play isn't as good as what people thought. All three quarterbacks were in the Heisman Trophy watching. I think Tulane's quarterback is just as good. I think Aguilar for Tennessee is better. And the USC quarterback can go up and down the field. And I thought Jelly was part of that deal. So we'll see in the sort of national landscape. And the other one, Bobby Petrino's still back and coaching.
Yeah, he is.
Coach? Come on.
Yeah, are we going to see him? He's the interim coach right now, but wouldn't be that far-fetched to think that he just ends up back at Arkansas next year as their head coach. It's crazy.
Well, what is it? I mean, he goes back to Louisville after getting fired. He's at Arkansas. He gets in a motorcycle accident with, I don't know if he was married at the time, but there was some hanky-panky in there. He gets fired there.
Hanky-panky, yeah.
In the same place again. It's like, what is this? But I'll say this from an offensive mind, he is good.
Yeah, he is a good offensive coach. It's a little bit like Lane Kiffin. There's some baggage. You don't really know what his character is, but he can call some offensive plays for sure. All right, Scooter, we appreciate you checking in. Scooter all over the map, per usual. I will say, on his thought on one of the guys is going to leave, if you stay with Rickie, Luke Carney will leave. I think it's less likely that Luke Carney would leave considering he's a true freshman right now. He did not go into this year expecting to play. Rickie Collins, of course, if he gets benched after starting the year behind, then he's probably going to look elsewhere. So I think it's a little different. If you make the decision to stick with Rickie, you probably have a better chance of keeping Luke Carney. Let's keep the phone calls coming. How about Jay in Baldwinsville? What's up, Jay?
Yeah, hey, guys. So my thought is this, is that I think it's a little premature that we're calling for a true freshman, Luke Carney, and there is no way that even for the next 3 or 4 or 5 games that they're gonna pull the trigger on Rickie Collins. And I've got a million reasons why that's the case. It's the $1 million of NIL money that they paid this kid. Okay, they got to figure out. The NIL investors right now that invested this money. Okay, are looking for what the return on investment is yet, and they don't have a big enough sample of this yet. And to be honest with you, Fran is hoping to God that this works out for this kid, because I'm telling you, the old saying about throwing bad money or good money following up on bad money. If they don't get this right, they just threw $1 million at this kid. So Fran is going to give this kid 1 million opportunities to fail. Okay, and so you're not going to see a decision on this for several more games.
I think I'm with you. I mean, I said that, Jay. I don't see Fran making the decision. The conversation, I think, is more right now, should he make the decision? And I think that's a fair conversation to have right now. But you're right. I don't think Fran is going to make that call.
No, we're not even close to that. This is just, honestly, this is just sports talk fodder. I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's great to get people listening and get people engaged, but there's no way they're going away from this guy this early. And to be honest with you, he has shown some flashes. I mean, he's thrown some good balls.
Yeah.
But again, to be honest with you, I think he was way overhyped coming out of high school. But just judging on what the product is now, and after being in college for 3 years. There is no way that they're going to give up on this guy this early with all the money they got invested in him.
So let's just say, Jay, that next 2 games they kind of do what they've been doing offensively, and they lose big to Pittsburgh, and then they go on the road and they lose big at Georgia Tech. Are you confident that after 2 more bad games, you'd call back in and say it's still premature or there's still no shot?
I am.
Okay. That's fair.
And to be honest with you, I wouldn't say this same thing a couple of years ago. Before this NIL explosion and all this stuff, the dynamics behind it, I would say no, absolutely not. But with the way things are today, with money driving everything and the investment they have in this kid, no, I don't think. I think they're going to run with him. I think they're going to roll with him. And at some point, they also have to factor in, is it good for Luke Carney to get in and play? Because
you're right about that. Yeah.
Does he want to lose a year? I mean, does he want to lose a year, or is he, does he not playing enough games where he can redshirt and get this year back? So if I'm a parent of Luke Carney, I'm having that discussion with Fran about this.
That's a very good point. We appreciate you checking in, Jay. We do have to hit a break. We'll get to Mark out of the break, and we welcome more of your phone calls as well, 315-437-7644. He's right that if Rickie Collins has seen his confidence shattered, and Rickie Collins has been in college football for 3 years, and he had more reps and had more experience than Luke Carney, it's reasonable to be fearful that if you turn to Luke Carney and he's got this really daunting road schedule and he's a true freshman, you might have his confidence get shattered. Again, once a confidence gets shattered for a quarterback, and I keep using that phrase, shaken, shatter, whatever you want to call it, once your confidence is off the map, we saw with Tommy DeVito, it usually takes a change of scenery to recover. And we've seen quarterbacks recover in the NFL when they change sceneries. Baker Mayfield, look what he's doing this year. Or they get a different offensive coordinator. Drake May, new offensive coordinator, looks like a different guy last night, and he's grown. But also when your confidence is teetering and you get off to a rough start, sometimes that really rattles the quarterback and they don't recover from that. So that's something you have to be cautious when you're talking about Luke Carney, when you're talking about Rickie Collins. What do you want to do to make sure that we are getting the best version of these guys, not just next year, but the year after that and forward? The best version of the future Luke Carney, the future Rickie Collins, for the future of the Syracuse football program. We'll get back to more of your phone calls as we return from this break. You're listening to Drive Time on ESPN Radio.
This is our...
Yeah, Jay seemed very confident it was $1 million. I mean, it could be right around there. I don't know. But that would be about market rate for a quarterback. So, especially if Rickie's pedigree and all that and coming from LSU, that would make sense. Is it basketball season yet? We're getting there. Yeah. Maybe Jay contributed to the NIL.
We lost Mark. I think his phone must have died. He said he was at 2%.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. He's always like running home from work and stuff too. So
like, hopefully you're not getting on the subway. He's like, oh, well, the phone's on 2%.
Like, brutal. Yanks did get slitted. That was a tough weekend for the Yanks. Didn't see that coming, really, although that's kind of how it's gone for them in Toronto this year. Yeah, it's not a good sign when we're talking about putting in the freshman third. I did not think at any point this year we'd be saying, is that Luke Carney's music? Especially after a 3-3 start. That's kind of what we expected, a 3-3 start. I think it's just a fascinating one because I see the side of it where it's way too premature and Rickie's talented and he'll get better. But also, I was watching the game Saturday, and it felt like just so hopeless offensively. And it felt like maybe it's worth it just seeing Luke Carney, and then you go into the bye week and you have a sense of how good is Luke Carney a little bit more. Paulie kept the money. Did you at least get a pizza out of it, Kev? Yeah, we'll talk some hoops this week. I am ready for hoops. I think they're going to be much better. Ah, Kev, you had to buy your own? Brutal. I told Paulie if it came up that he owed you a pizza and then I'd Venmo him. Kyan's bodyguard, is he a stick? Question is, is he a sandbagger? Do I really want to play him Gavendo? Because I'm assuming he could beat me up if I don't pay up. If he's a good bodyguard. We'll get into the defense here. Defense made some interesting changes in the second half. They did play better in the second half, but it's still concerning for sure. I literally told Paulie before he went there that day, so he's lying to you. He's playing dumb. Welcome back into Drive Time. Talking all things Rickie Collins, Luke Carney. Is it time to make a decision, make a move at the quarterback position? Not a topic I thought I would be leading the Monday show with after Syracuse is 3-3 on the season, going into their bye week, coming off a tough loss to SMU. But it's been a weird season to this point. And I hear both sides of the argument right now. I don't think Fran Brown will be making a move anytime soon. Based on his comments, he's going to support his guy. What we know about Fran Brown and what we know about what he thinks of Rickie Collins, he's going to stick with him here and see this thing through. They will play Pittsburgh off the bye week. That'll be a 7:30 kick inside the Dome for homecoming on Saturday, October 18th. That's the next time Syracuse football will be in action. We'll talk some Syracuse hoops throughout the week as well. They're going down to Charlotte for the ACC Media Days. Men's basketball will be talking tomorrow to the ACC media. We'll hear from Red Autry tomorrow, his press conference, and a little bit from J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman, who are the two players that are making the trip for the men's basketball team. Women's basketball team was down there today, and they did their press tour and their tour in Charlotte. So good to have basketball season on the horizon. Let's hear a little bit from some of the players and some of the interesting comments from Fran Brown after the game, post-game Saturday down in Dallas against SMU. First, let's start with Yasin Willis. And this was an interesting comment where he talked about, all right, we're going into the bye week. What does this team need to work on right now? Here's starting running back Yasin Willis on that.
This is a time for us to, get rest and recover, but this is also a time for us to get closer as a team. I feel like that's a part that we missing. Like last year, I feel like that's what we had. We had a great bond as a team last year. With the situation with Steve going down and Rickie coming up, I feel like we all need to rebuild that again. You know what I'm saying? We all got to come together and just have a better understanding of each other, and understand like why we out here, why we doing this, and how to get back on track to what we was doing before.
So we talked about the team's confidence seems rattled, of course. How could it not be after the last two games? The team's confidence in their quarterback, you can sense some frustration. Yasin Willis was then asked, what can Rickie Collins do better so that he starts performing better at the quarterback position?
I feel like maybe sometimes he does go a little too fast. Maybe he sees something and then he just goes right to it. Sometimes I be with them in like they meetings and they coach say to them like you gotta have soft eyes. I feel like sometimes he make his decisions a little too quick, but that's something easy that we could just adjust. That's easy fix.
So that's running back Yasin Willis on quarterback Rickie Collins. You don't want to be in a position where the running back is saying what the quarterback should be doing differently. And not that he's wrong. I mean, I think that's a fair criticism of Rickie Collins to this point. But that kind of goes back to the general conversation of what's the confidence meter right now within the team on their quarterback, Rickie Collins. Here's what Rickie had to say. And in this, you almost just feel bad for Rickie when you listen to these comments because you can tell that Rickie knows he is better than this. And he's trying all he can, but he's not performing, and it's probably because he's dealing with some nerves right now.
Those are throws I can make. I mean, you was there around the springtime. You see me make that throw before. I can make that throw in my sleep probably, but, I mean, I wouldn't say timing. It's just something you got to do. I mean, I got to make those throws. Those are plays that are pivotal in games like this. Coach Nixon does a great job calling the plays for us. We have to do better executing. I have to do better executing, getting us in the right situation and getting the ball to our playmakers. I had to deliver the ball more accurately. I was very inaccurate today, and nothing more and nothing less. I mean, he called a good game. I got to do better and executing and delivering the ball.
So it's hard to hear that from Rickie. He knows it. He wants to do better, of course, and he's just a young kid that's fighting through this right now, and that kind of puts into perspective when you see some of the vulgar comments and things like that. Rickie has handled himself great in these post games, and I know that doesn't really count for anything to the fan base, but he has gotten up there. He's took it like a man and said, I need to be better, and it was interesting to hear him sort of start that, and you almost go into the speak that you're taught where you say, we need to do better, and then he sort of stopped himself and said, no, I just need to do better. But that's kind of what he's going through right now, and you can understand that this is tough for him right now. And he's a talented guy that has been waiting for this opportunity, and it has not started the way he wanted. Let's go back to the phone lines. Let's see what Mark in New York City has on his mind right now. What's up, Mark?
Hey, Tim. How you doing? Two thoughts. One, just after watching the tape again, thought, second half Rickie Collins was a totally different Rickie Collins. Yes, granted, the SMU defense was probably different, but I think he's unlocked a little bit of something with the dual threat ability.
Yeah.
And I could really see a totally new Rickie Collins, against Pitt. I think we need to, give him that shot to, see if we could, put together a game plan that's really going to more utilize his feet. Because I think it was just a totally different offense. It's going to open up receivers more, hopefully maybe even open up the running game a little bit. So that's one thought. I want to get your thoughts on it. And my second thought, started to go back to coaching and coaching changes of Fran Brown and getting nervous he's going to leave. The more and more I think about it, with Penn State losing, I'm getting slightly nervous that Penn State could really put a good eye on Fran Brown. Elijah Robinson is a Penn State alum. And, I've just been thinking more and more with the Northeast ties, Penn State probably has a bigger budget that, Penn State might make a big push for Fran Brown. He's proven, yes, I know we lost the last two games, but he's a proven guy in the NIL era, and I'm just slightly getting nervous about Penn State making a splash that way if they move on from James Franklin.
Yeah, I think on the Penn State note, I just don't think Fran, there would be a lot of coaches that would want that job, and you're right that Fran has Northeast ties, and that might be a job that might be higher on his list than some other jobs. I find it hard to believe that Penn State would interview everyone and they'd come to the conclusion right now and their entire alumni and boosters would say, we're going to go with Fran Brown off of one good season and then what's maybe trending towards a season that doesn't look great in terms of the win-loss record. And I know that there's, things and variables that have led into that. Like, I'm still very confident in Fran Brown. I think our perception and the chatter of Fran Brown leaving for some great job, we might be overhyping that a little bit now, just because to me it was always kind of crazy that he would go to like Florida next year. And the only reason it sort of became a talking point is when it was the Clemson game and then there were articles written. And there was some hope at that point that he could be engineering another 8, 9, 10 win season, something in that neighborhood. But that's not going to happen now. And I don't think he's going to be as hot of a name in coaching cycles. I just think Penn State would look elsewhere, or Fran would be down their list quite a bit. Like, put it this way, if Penn State hired Fran Brown and that was their move, I'm not sure that the Penn State fan base would be doing jumping jacks and saying that's the guy. Like, his track record is so solid, and I think they're going to have more proven commodities out there, and I think Fran's obviously a great coach. On the Rickie Collins running point, that's a good point from Mark, and we talked about it on Friday. That's something that I wanted to see more of from Rickie Collins. I think he did a much better job running the football in this game, and his tendency was a little bit more to use his legs, so maybe that was something that was discussed with the coaching staff and him. I think we will see more and more of that as he progresses. It's also, in this offense, there are guys that are open, and you've got to put someone out there that can hit those open throws. I mean, it's not a matter of they're not scheming up the right plays or they're having trouble getting guys open. And if you're getting guys open to the degree that Jeff Nixon is, then you do want a quarterback that is confident enough and pass first and those type of things, like we saw with Steve Angeli. And the other thing I'll say on Rickie Collins and how he played in the fourth quarter, and I kind of said it earlier, he did play much better in the fourth quarter. The concern with that is that was the least amount of pressure he's been under. And I do feel like a lot of his issues right now are just between the years and just getting the confidence and trusting himself. I mean, even the way that he took that QB sneak in the first quarter, it felt like there was a little bit of a hesitation on when he got the football and when he did the sneak. It just wasn't executed well. So when you're seeing little stuff like that, you can't have hesitation at the quarterback position. It's tough to get rid of those negative thoughts when you start out your young career playing poorly. But that's the biggest thing right now. And that's why the fourth quarter to me wasn't some light bulb like it was Steve Angeli against UConn. It was him playing well in kind of garbage time, and I didn't make a ton of that, but maybe that's just me. We'll hit our final break. We can sneak in a phone call on the other side if you'd like, and we'll hear some from Fran Brown, his thoughts on what the defense did to improve in the second half. That's next on Drive Time.
Compact yet mighty.
Yeah, Penn State is on the schedule, so that I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be interesting. Gio is putting down some wings. Good. Slamming the Wildcat wings. I thought it was funny that they got the fourth down on a Dan Villari Wildcat. I don't know if wasn't watching the watch party at that point. I don't know if you guys made mention of it, Gio, but it was on the news that you were at Wildcat when that happened. Yeah, that makes sense, Gavendo. They got a pretty good Syracuse grad player. Kayla was probably recruiting her already. I didn't even see Barstool retweeted it, honestly. Paulie told me that today, and I still haven't seen it. Barstool was late to that one. They've been all over our stuff recently, though. Elbow deep in some wings. Understandable. They're tasty wings there. When do we get the call that Dan Villari should be the quarterback? We've seen it before. Just go back to the Wildcat with Villari, right? here we go. Here's the link. Thanks. I know. Yeah, the uncle who we're assuming was the uncle. I mean, not what we need right now when he's calling in and saying that. I thought Gio handled it well. It's because the thing about if it was his uncle, he said something like, I don't know if Luke Carney's the answer. So even then you're admitting that this is not really on Fran. Like, Jonte Cook also has put up good numbers the last couple games. So if you're really worried about him getting in the league, his numbers look fine. And he had the 2 fumbles last week. I mean, one of those was a really tough one to hang on to the football, but still. We don't have a 2-hour show, so I figured I'd just turn. I'm just going over the limit of an hour several times now. Too much to talk about right now. It's tough to squeeze it into an hour.
Visit them at SyracuseBicycle.com. ESPN Radio 97.7 and 100.1.
All right, final segment on the show this afternoon. Drive Time with Tim Leonard. Here with you 5 to 6 p.m. weekdays going forward. Talking all things Rickie Collins, Syracuse football today. If you missed any of that discussion, you can check it out on our Q Sports Talk stream, qsportstalk.com, on the Twitch stream. YouTube also has a simulcast of all our shows. You can always watch the shows there. And you can find us on the podcast feeds, wherever you get your podcast. ESPN Syracuse / Utica Rome is the podcast feed to search if you want to get the podcast version of the show each and every day, plus our Orange Nation show, which airs 12 to 2. Let's play you one interesting comment from Fran Brown Saturday that stood out in his post-game press conference before we get out of here. This was Fran on what changed with the defense in the second half. They played better in the second half, and listen into this carefully because it's kind of an interesting comment from Fran.
I just thought we called the wrong stuff in the first half, honestly. Second half, we didn't. There was things that I was put in this week that I wanted to do that we didn't do in the first half. That wasn't right. We shouldn't have done that. We didn't put the kids in the right position in the first half. And in the second half, we put them more in better position. You've seen differences in the things that we've done. So I thought that we didn't call it right in the first half.
So I immediately went to Pro Football Focus and tried to figure out what was different about Syracuse's defensive play calling in the second half versus the first half. Here's a couple interesting things I found. Syracuse ran cover 2 10 times in the second half. Did not do it at all in the first half. 10 times they ran cover 2 in the second half. Did not do it at all in the first half. Cover 2 being 2 deep safeties. So that was something that was different as we try and figure out what was different about, or what is Fran Brown alluding to with the play calling was different in the second half. They also blitzed significantly more, double what they did in the first half, according to Pro Football Focus. Syracuse blitzed on 64% of dropbacks in the second half, just 32% in the first half. So maybe he's alluding to that the blitzing picked up and they were more blitz heavy. We talked about going into the game knowing it was Kevin Jennings at the quarterback position. If you listen to our Friday show, I mentioned that Syracuse should probably do more zone coverage in this game against Kevin Jennings. And also I said maybe they should blitz less because this is the number 1 graded offensive line and still is on Pro Football Focus. And watching the game, it was evident Kevin Jennings gets great pass protection and he still does make some mistakes when he's having a tough time deciphering zone coverage, and he still holds on to the ball a little bit too long in some instances. The zone versus man coverage split, so Syracuse going into the game against SMU, we brought this up, they were 119th in the country in how often they played zone defense out of 136 schools. 119th in the country, played zone 56% of the time on the season leading into this game. Well, in the first half against SMU, that went up to 64% zone coverage, so we saw less man coverage in this game already in the first half. Not a drastic difference in the second half, but it did go up a little bit more to 69% zone coverage. So if you're trying to figure out what is Fran talking about in terms of the play calling differences and what are they shifting with their identity of the defense that they figured worked better in the second half against SMU, and he's sort of hinting at they're going to continue to do that, I would say more cover 2 really stands out. They played cover 2 10 times in the second half, according to Pro Football Focus, after not doing it at all in the first half. And they blitzed about double what they did in the second half against SMU compared to the first half. And we've talked about Syracuse has been blitzing way, way more this season than they did last year in the first year under Elijah Robinson as the defensive coordinator. We're out of time for our show today. Thanks to Giovanni Heater for producing. Thanks to all of you for calling in. And we will catch you next time on Drive Time here on ESPN Radio and QSportsTalk.com.
Did you miss Drive?